Hey guys, welcome to another episode of What's Your Build? And in this one we've got the Kraton EXB, and this is one of the earliest cars we have on the channel. And this one's been around with us a good long time. We're into year 3 here now at the channel, and this one's been around the whole time, and it has been one of our favorites. I know there's big beefcake kits and stuff that you can buy, and they're fairly expensive. The upgrades we try to put into these cars, we try not to break the bank here, guys. We try to make it affordable and yet make them really tough. This one fits the bill. In this video, we're gonna go over what we've done. We're gonna explain why we did it, and we'll show you everything that's in there, and we will have the part numbers in the description down below. This should be pretty informative. Check this out. All right, so let's get the body off this thing and we'll have a quick look at it here. And right off the bat, if you'll look down inside of this, you'll notice a bunch of red components. And this was the first series of car that came out with the hardened EXB equipment in there. And it's all made of 7075 T6 aluminum. So if it's red, the shock towers, the body braces, the servo mount, all that stuff, that is the heavy aluminum stuff, and also the chassis made out of the same stuff. So it does have a lot higher grade aluminum than your factory one. So we left all that alone because it was unnecessary to change it. Also, I really am impressed with the front bumper. That thing's impressive, and it'll take a serious hit and just smile and keep going. It's a beautiful thing. Also, the wheels and tires are stock. These are Copperhead 2s, but we do have the hot racing wheel nuts on there, and they're enclosed. And that keeps the grub screws in the axles nice and loose. So not loose, but able to get off when you have to service these in the field. When you have the regular nuts that come with them, it has a tendency to jam dirt in there, and it can make them pretty difficult to service these sometimes. That does take care of that problem quite nicely. On the outside edge of this, down in here, the front wheel hub carriers, these are aluminum now. We got rid of the stock ones. These are made by Atomic. They go on really nicely. And once we put those on, we no longer have had problems with the front ends popping the balls out. That's a real issue for these things. And we run them pretty hard here, so popping the balls out is not okay. Also, beside that, when you get into these things in the field and you have the plastic ones, getting that little castle nut on the back of the ball to start can be a real difficult thing to do. When you put that in there to retain the ball, it has to push up against the ball so you can set this so it doesn't wobble too much. Those can be so easy to cross thread in the field, especially if you don't have the right tool to do it. These ones are all aluminum, and that eliminated that problem altogether. If you look all the way around here, you'll notice that it does have the stock shock absorbers on it. And at one time we did have the big bore shocks on it, and those were gold. And we put those on to give them a test, and they did work, but we did have one fail. Granted, we launched it into some pretty ugly stuff, and that's what caused it. But at the same time, that one failed, and these are still the stock ones, and they haven't failed yet. We haven't had to rebuild them or anything. We've changed the oil once just to keep things looking good, but that's about it. If you look at the top here, right up here on these, we like to use, this is just fuel tubing that we use at the top here, where these mount, instead of having that solid ball in there, we like to have the fuel tubing because that'll absorb just a little more of the brutal impact, and it eliminates some of the transfer of energy from the shock absorber to the pin. And once we've changed it to that, we've had a lot less problems with it. Down inside of this, right down in here, we swapped out the bell crank set for an aluminum set because we were breaking the stock ones. And whenever you take an impact like this on the car and it causes quick movement, it transfers all of that energy instantly into the bell cranks, and they're plastic over aluminum. And so the aluminum barrel with the plastic part around it, it just doesn't hold up, and they're temperature sensitive. So it didn't take a whole lot to break them. But when you buy these aluminum ones, there's a little bit of an issue that goes with that too, because at times when you go to put them on, you have to make sure and look at them. The parts move against each other. And if they don't move smoothly, if you don't get them cleaned up so that they don't drag against one another, you can burn the servo out in it. And we did that. It lasted maybe 10 minutes once we changed that component. and it blew the servo, and it was a really good 35 kilogram servo, and it just gutted it because there was nothing to take up the extra. So when you jam it, you can see the servo barely moves here, and see if I can get it where you can see that. So take a look at the servo now. When you move it, the servo catches up to the servo saver, which is what it's supposed to do. And if your servo isn't doing that, then you're going to have problems in the long run, because this needs to be able to take the impact and crank without burning up your servo. Also, since we're talking about the servo, this has a 35 kilogram servo in it now from VTech, and it's a darn good one. It's quick, it's inexpensive, and of course the link will be in the description below for it, but those work really nicely. I have no problems with that. Also, as far as drivetrain goes, guys, generally here at the channel, we like to stay as close to stock as possible, and I know that sounds a little weird, but at the end of the day, for someone that puts one of these together or gets an RTR out, theirs should be able to go as fast as this one, because it has the stock 2050 motor in it, and it does have the BLX 185 speed control. And I'm really happy with the BLX 185s. I've never had a problem with one. I've had problems with the Spectrums, with the Traxxas ones. I've burned both of those out. I've even burned up some hobby wings. But the BLX 185s have held up for me really well, and I've got good performance out of them each time, so I'm not worried about that. That's all good. Also, if you look right on the motor here, you'll see it has a twin fan setup on it, and you can get those in many different layouts. You can get great big fans, small fans, whatever. The most important bit here is to get some air movement over the can on the motor, and the bigger you can get for your heat sink that goes around, the farther it goes around, the better it will be. So when you pick those, make sure you pick one that can absorb some of the heat from the motor and transfer that heat away. That's the important part, keep you from burning things up, especially if you're running a little higher gearing. Always check your temperatures and make sure you're running good. But when you're really running hard in high traction, even when your temperatures were good running out in dirt, when you get into that high traction, your temperatures will go up. Also, right on top of the speed control there, you'll see there's a screen. And that screen is just screen door mesh. That's what it is. Went to the local hardware store, bought a small roll of that stuff, and this isn't the plastic stuff, guys. This is the metal stuff. And the holes in the top of the ESCs generally allow twigs and sticks to get down into the fan, and it can break off fan blades. So what I did here was I simply pulled that apart, and I put a piece of screen in the top and screwed it down, and that eliminated any kind of problems that we had with the fan on the speed control. Everything works really well there. As far as the radio goes, since we're talking about the internals, the radio system is a DX3 with a 3-channel Spectrum receiver, and I believe the one that's in it is a 315, and those are super easy to sync, especially with the DX3. You push the button on the transmitter, turn it on. Push the button on the receiver, turn it on. Run through the setup really quickly, and you're running. And it has some really nice features as far as if you put a gyro-capable receiver in there, this one will work the gyro. If you don't have that in there, this works as the dual rate for the front wheels. So as you turn it down, these steer a little less. So you can take some of the touchiness out of it. The next one over here, this one controls the braking. So if you get into a high traction situation, you pile on the brakes and it likes to nose over, you can back the brakes off a little bit. So the radio system in it has good range, it's quick. All of that plays a role in how this thing responds. Now, as far as the wing itself goes, this is Italian wing. It does have RPM wing mounts on it, which we are a fan of because these things will really take a pounding and not break. It won't transfer too much power into the car because it'll flex at the wing mount instead of driving all that energy internally, and it prevents you from breaking stuff. So that works really well. On the back, you'll notice that it has a big wheelie bar on it. That is a T-Bone Racing wheelie bar, and we bought it 3 years ago when they were still in business. T-Bone is no longer in business, guys, so you can't get a hold of one of these anymore, and that is a shame. This is arguably the best wheelie bar ever made for the 6S platform for Arrma. This is a really exceptional wheelie bar. If you get a chance to buy one from somebody, I recommend getting one. But like I say, they don't make them anymore. As far as the internals go on this now, it doesn't have the LSD diffs in it. So this came with the LSD diffs front and rear, and I wasn't a fan. So I didn't really care for what it did. I did have problems with them. I did burn them down, and it just wasn't, it didn't give me enough, what would be the word you're looking for? It didn't give me enough choices as far as how I wanted to set my rig up. So as far as being able to choose your fluids, when you got the diff plates in there, there's oils that you're not supposed to use because it causes too much drag on the plates, causes problems inside. It's just a whole bunch of stuff that, yes, you can get good at, and you can tune them and they can work for you. But for what we do, we just went ahead and put the version 4 differentials in it, and that handled it nicely. I did burn one up. How long ago was that? Probably 2 months ago. I was out running it at our favorite area, and I was doing some big bowl jumps, and I hit the ground pretty hard, and I was coming in nose down, so I came in full throttle, and just as I let off the throttle, it hit the ground. It was just a little more than it wanted, and it scorched the back differential, and that's to be understood. I mean, every now and then you got to pull them apart and check the shimming, guys. You just do. They have pretty fine teeth in these differentials, and I wish the teeth in it was a little bit bigger, but with what's in there, it never hurts to pop the front off and have a look at your spacing, make sure things are good. This had sat on the shelf for a while. I never really paid any attention to it. We went out to just go play, and I burned it up. Still, swapping it for another one, we built one, put it in there, and it's working fine now. So the differentials, how you set your fluid is up to you. If you're bashing hard, if you want the overspin on the front end, it's all in how you set your fluids up. I like the overspin on the front myself. These come with a pretty light fluid in the middle. And so what that means is that when you get traction in the back, when you stand on the throttle and it crouches like this, it puts more pressure to the rear wheels, causing more traction. And instead of keeping these spinning and allowing it to stand up and flip over, it allows it to overspin the excess into the front. So it'll overspin the fronts, and it will keep you accelerating. Now, if you're into real heavy stunting, a little heavier fluid in the center will give you that extra dig in the back so you can do your backflips and stuff. But in the air, you can still get the backflips anyway, because that's all about tire mass here. So torque and tire mass is what gets chassis rotation, which what lets you get around. If you put like the Italian tires on here, you won't hardly get it to rotate. It just doesn't want to flip much. You might get one off of a decent jump, but when you put something bigger like this on there, you can easily pull a double, and if you put the back flips on it, you can get triples. So it's all a matter of what you want to do with it and how you want to use it. As far as the build goes, that's pretty much all of the cool stuff we've done to it. We did do a modification to the radio box itself, and right down in here, you'll see this little block with the antenna sticking out. They always run things down through this little awkward spot, and I'm never a fan of that. When you get down into the radio box, you have to slide everything through that one little slot with a little tiny shiver gasket that goes around all the wires. And it's doable, guys. It really is, but the way they run it around and have it run up through this little mount down below, it can be difficult to get into, especially in the field. This one's attached to the lid. So when you pull this off, pull the lid off, the antenna wire slips right out of this. When you go to put the lid back in, fish it through, and then slip the tube back on it and push it down. Done. And it's watertight up top, so it won't leak any fluids in there, and it gets the antenna up nice and tall. It's just a block of plastic. Any plastic will do. One screw up from the bottom, and then find out what size works for your tubing. Slide that right in there, put a cap on it, and you are good to go. Now let's have a look at what we've done to the suspension. Now, we did switch all of the arms over to RPM, and initially we put the version 4 arms on it, and I know this was designed with version 5 arms, guys. I'm aware of that. We've had this conversation for 3 years now. At the same time, it does cause it to crouch just a little bit in the back, and the option is just buy the RPM version 5 arms and stick them on there. There's nothing wrong with that either. RPM makes more limber arms than what come with this, and the problem is the stock arms that you get with this, especially in the front, they're super strong. And what happens is when you take an impact, and it doesn't even have to be a big impact, but when you take an impact, the chassis goes down and hits the ground. When that happens, it allows the drive shafts to pull out of the drive cups, and it locks things to the ground. It's not cool when it does it, and it does it in the field when it's least, it's just always frustrating when it happens. Once we switched over to the RPM arms, we've never had it spit out one of those drive lines again. So it's not just a matter of how you set your distance. In other words, how you go from the ball ends down to here. It's not a matter of how you shim your distance, because those arms for some reason allow more travel, and it allows the balls on the end of the drive shafts to pop out. So that's right here. This here pulls against this drive shaft, and once it gets out to a certain deal under rotation, it spits it right out and it locks it right to the ground. Besides that, if you want to go with the version 5 arms, I recommend those. We have put those on other ones. This one's never lost an arm with the version 4, so we've had no reason to change them. That's why it still has the version 4 arms on it. But if I did break one of these, we'd convert it right back over to the version 5s, because the EXB was the first model to come out with those arms on it. So there you go, guys. That's our build for the Kraton EXB 6S, and this has been a lot of fun, and we're not done showing you how this thing runs yet. So if you haven't already, don't forget to bash that like button and help our content spread. You know, we like showing you what we've done. This one's been years in the making, and this has held up beautifully for that entire time once we got the upgrades in it. The thing is, these aren't all that expensive to put in, guys. The arm change, the wing mount change, the servo change, and this came as a roller, so we had to buy a servo anyway, but you can do the same things to your RTR. You can buy the EXB chassis, the shock braces, the shock towers and all that. That's a lot of money to throw at it, but if you just change a part or two, the servo, the bell cranks, whatever you're having trouble with, you can swap those out, and they're not crazy expensive. So if you have anything you'd like to add to this video, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below and help others along the way. Hey guys, for AJ Jam Studios, I'm AJ saying, keep wrenching, guys. Dude, no, that was perfect backflip off that. Sounds like a diff. That's a full diff blow right there. I just don't know if it's front or back.